The skies above the Persian Gulf turned orange before dawn. Across the rooftops of Doha, Dubai, and Manama, the low percussion of distant explosions rolled in like thunder from a storm that had no visible horizon. Radar screens inside the fortified compound of Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest American military installation in the Middle East, housing more than 10,000 personnel, lit up with trajectories that had not been anticipated. In the Bahraini waters of the Gulf, U.S. Navy Fifth Fleet sailors scrambled to battle stations. In Kuwait, the unmistakable contrail of intercepted ballistic missiles streaked white lines across a black sky. The conflict that began on February 28, 2026, when the United States and Israel launched coordinated surprise airstrikes deep inside Iran, had now turned outward with a ferocity that regional analysts had long warned about but hoped would never materialize. What Tehran announced was not simply a retaliatory posture. It was a formal ultimatum addressed to the entire structure of Western military presence across the Middle East. According to Iranian state media and statements issued by officials within Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the message delivered to Washington was precise and unambiguous. Iranian military commanders, citing the strikes that killed Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei on February 28, declared that all American and NATO-affiliated military installations across the Middle East, numbering no fewer than 27 identified facilities across 7 countries, must cease operations or face direct, sustained engagement. Iranian officials claimed the ultimatum was not rhetorical. Brigadier General Ebrahim Jabari, an advisor to the IRGC commander, stated in remarks broadcast by Iran's official Islamic Republic of Iran broadcasting that Iranian forces had already begun targeting those installations and would intensify those operations. According to Iranian state media, the IRGC claimed strikes on Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, Ali Al Salem Air Base in Kuwait, Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates, and the headquarters of the U.S. Navy Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. Iranian military spokesman stated that the strikes were a direct and proportionate response to what they described as an act of aggression and assassination against the sovereign leadership of the Islamic Republic. What those officials claimed these strikes represented, symbolically and strategically, was equally significant. Tehran declared it had crossed the threshold from deterrence to active warfare, and that no American uniform in the region was beyond its reach. But the story quickly became far more complicated. Before we break down the full strategic picture of what Iran's ultimatum against 27 NATO and U.S. bases actually means for regional stability and global security, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss the latest dramatic developments shaping global geopolitics. According to U.S. Central Command, American and Allied air defense systems intercepted the majority of the ballistic missiles and armed drones launched in the opening wave of Iranian retaliatory strikes. NATO air defense batteries in Turkey shot down at least one Iranian ballistic missile that had entered Turkish airspace, according to reporting confirmed by the alliance. U.S. military officials acknowledged that at least 17 American sites across the Middle East sustained some degree of damage in the early phase of the conflict, but they disputed Iranian claims of widespread destruction at major installations. The Pentagon stated that Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar remained operational despite incoming fire, and that Allied air defense architecture, layered systems combining the U.S. Patriot missile battery, the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System known as THAAD, and Israeli-developed Arrow interceptors shared with Gulf partners, had performed as designed. Qatar's Ministry of Defense independently confirmed it had shot down 2 Iranian Su-24 bomber aircraft, marking the first time any country in the current conflict had destroyed Iranian air assets. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, speaking from the Pentagon, stated that the mission parameters remained focused on 3 objectives: destroying Iran's missile threat, eliminating Iran's naval capability, and ensuring Tehran could not develop nuclear weapons. U.S. media reported that the broader assessment within American intelligence was that Iran, though capable of inflicting pain across the region, lacked the precision and sustained logistical capacity to neutralize the major bases it had named in its ultimatum. Between these narratives lies a complex reality that analysts are still working to understand. What does the network of 27 U.S. and NATO-affiliated bases across the Middle East actually represent? The answer is the entire forward operating architecture of Western military power in the region. Al Udeid Air Base, located outside Doha in Qatar, serves as the forward headquarters of United States Air Forces Central and the Combined Air Operations Center, the nerve system through which all American air operations across Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan have historically been coordinated. Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates hosts the most advanced American surveillance and strike aircraft in the region, including the F-35A and the RQ-4 Global Hawk drone. The U.S. Navy Fifth Fleet Headquarters in Bahrain commands all American naval assets across the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, the Gulf of Oman, and parts of the Indian Ocean, waters through which roughly 20% of the world's daily oil supply passes. Britain's Akrotiri military base on Cyprus, struck by an Iranian drone according to reporting confirmed by British defense officials, provides a critical staging and surveillance platform for the eastern Mediterranean. Ali Al Salem Air Base in Kuwait has served as a primary logistical hub for U.S. ground force operations in the region for more than 2 decades. When Iran named all 27 installations as targets, it was not listing soft targets of symbolic value. It was drawing a map of the precise infrastructure that sustains American power projection from the Mediterranean to the Arabian Sea. The message was clear. Tehran was signaling that it possessed both the intent and the capability to impose sustained costs on the United States wherever American forces were stationed within its missile range. The immediate military response across the region was measured, but consequential. Gulf State Air Defense Systems, Patriot batteries in Saudi Arabia, Qatari interceptors, Emirati THAAD units shifted to maximum readiness. NATO forces in Turkey went to elevated alert after an Iranian ballistic missile was intercepted over Turkish airspace, raising fears within the alliance of an Article 5 scenario, the Collective Defense Clause, being inadvertently triggered. 3 American F-15 fighter jets were lost in Kuwait in a friendly fire incident involving a Kuwaiti Air Force F/A-18, a collision of confusion and compressed decision-making that underscored the volatility now governing the region's airspace. 6 U.S. service members were confirmed killed in action as of early March, with 18 more seriously wounded, according to U.S. Central Command. The regional government response arrived swiftly. Saudi Arabia intercepted 2 Iranian drones over Ras Tanura, one of the world's largest oil refineries capable of producing 550,000 barrels per day, and Riyadh publicly confirmed damage to the U.S. embassy in its capital. Jordan temporarily evacuated its American embassy due to what officials described as a credible, unspecified threat. Israel, simultaneously striking both Iran and Lebanon in a 2-front operation, reported 10 civilian deaths after an Iranian missile penetrated defenses and struck a bomb shelter near Jerusalem. That expansion to Lebanon pulled Hezbollah fully into the conflict, opening a 3rd operational theater with its own escalation logic. The global market reaction arrived within hours. Futures contracts for Brent crude, the international oil benchmark, spiked nearly 9% to approximately $79 per barrel. The American benchmark, West Texas Intermediate, climbed 8% to $73 per barrel. Natural gas prices surged at an extraordinary rate. The Dutch natural gas benchmark, the standard for European energy pricing, rose almost 48% in a single afternoon trading session after Qatar's state energy company halted production of liquefied natural gas at its Ras Laffan facility following an Iranian attack on the complex. That spike in natural gas prices has consequences far beyond Europe's heating bills. It accelerates energy inflation across every industrial economy that imports liquefied natural gas, from Japan to South Korea to Germany. Major international carriers, Emirates, Etihad, and Qatar Airways, suspended flights indefinitely as airspace across the Middle East closed. Thousands of international travelers were stranded. The State Department issued an emergency advisory urging all American citizens across the region to depart immediately, using the capital letters reserved for the most severe level of threat. Diplomatic channels were simultaneously overwhelmed. European foreign ministers convened emergency sessions. France and Britain deployed additional naval assets to the eastern Mediterranean in response to the strike on Akrotiri. The United Nations Security Council met in emergency session, though the prospect of a binding resolution remained remote given the dynamics among permanent members. Inside the United States, the political reaction was immediate and fractious. The U.S. Senate voted on a measure to constrain presidential war powers. The vote failed, leaving the Trump administration with broad authority to continue operations. Senate Democrats argued that a war of this scale required congressional authorization. Senate Republicans largely defended executive discretion. President Trump, speaking to reporters, predicted the conflict could last approximately 4 weeks, calling it a necessary operation to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. He stated that the big wave had not yet arrived. Iran maintains that its ultimatum against 27 U.S. and NATO-affiliated bases is a legitimate act of national self-defense following what it describes as a war of aggression and assassination against its sovereign leadership. The United States and its allies maintain that the strikes of February 28 were a preemptive defensive operation aimed at eliminating a nuclear threat, disabling Iran's missile program, and degrading the capabilities of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Neither account fully satisfies the historical record, and neither account can be resolved in the fog of a conflict still deepening by the day. What is visible, with clarity, is the architecture of catastrophic risk now assembled across the Middle East. A conflict that began as a targeted strike has expanded across 7 countries, closed the world's most critical energy choke point, disrupted global aviation networks, struck NATO-affiliated territory for the first time since the alliance's founding, and placed the U.S. military on a war footing without a defined endpoint or an agreed exit condition. Every escalation creates the conditions for the next. Every missile intercepted over a Gulf capital, every base struck, every energy facility threatened, tightens the coil of consequence further. The fragile architecture of deterrence that kept the United States and Iran locked in 40 years of contained hostility has been replaced by something far more unstable, an active war without borders, fought across a geography that powers the global economy. The leadership in Tehran is transitional, grieving its slain supreme leader and governed by a 3-person council still consolidating authority. That uncertainty is not a stabilizing force. Uncertainty, in the language of geopolitical strategy, is the condition in which miscalculation thrives. Will Iran's ultimatum against 27 NATO and American bases remain a declaration of intent, or is it the opening statement of a sustained campaign of attrition that reshapes the balance of power across the Middle East for a generation? Stay tuned for further updates as this situation continues to develop. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss the latest dramatic geopolitical developments shaping the world.